Story 1. Once upon a time, in the heart of a bustling city, there stood an old, decrepit hospital. Its halls echoed with the memories of countless patients, nurses, and doctors who had passed through its doors. But now, only the night shift workers dared to tread its shadowy corridors, where strange whispers seemed to lurk in every corner. Among them was Emily, a young nurse with a penchant for the macabre. She had always been drawn to the mysteries of the night, and the hospital offered her the perfect playground for her fascination. But even she couldn't ignore the sense of unease that permeated the air as she made her rounds, checking on the few patients who remained in the dimly lit wards. One night, as Emily was preparing to administer medication to a particularly restless patient, she heard a faint whisper coming from the darkened hallway. It was so soft, she almost dismissed it as her imagination playing tricks on her. But then it came again, closer this time, and unmistakably human. Curiosity getting the better of her, Emily cautiously made her way towards the source of the sound. As she turned the corner, she was met with a sight that sent shivers down her spine. Standing there, bathed in the eerie glow of the emergency lights, was a figure cloaked in darkness. For a moment, Emily's heart froze in her chest as she stared at the mysterious intruder. But then, as if sensing her fear, the figure spoke in a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the grave. "Who are you?" Emily managed to stammer, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure stepped forward, revealing its features in the dim light. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce straight through Emily's soul. "I am Sarah," the woman replied, her voice barely more than a breath. "I used to work here, long ago. But now, I am trapped between worlds, condemned to wander these halls for all eternity." Emily's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the woman's words. Was she a ghost, a figment of her imagination, or something else entirely? But before she could formulate a response, Sarah reached out a hand towards her, her fingers cold as ice. "Help me," she pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. "Release me from this torment." Despite her fear, Emily felt a surge of compassion for the woman before her. She had always been drawn to the supernatural, but now she was faced with a choice that could have far-reaching consequences. With trembling hands, Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out a small vial of holy water that she always carried with her. Closing her eyes, she whispered a silent prayer as she sprinkled the water over Sarah's outstretched hand. Instantly, the air seemed to crackle with energy as Sarah let out a blood-curdling scream. Emily recoiled in horror as the woman's form began to contort and twist, her features morphing into something dark and malevolent. Before her stood not Sarah, but a creature of pure darkness, its eyes burning with hatred as it lunged towards Emily with outstretched claws. With a cry of terror, Emily turned and ran, her footsteps echoing off the walls as she fled for her life. Behind her, she could hear the creature's unearthly screams growing louder and louder, until they were all she could hear. But just as she thought she couldn't run any further, Emily burst through the doors of the hospital and into the cool night air. Gasping for breath, she collapsed on the pavement, her heart pounding in her chest as she looked back at the building looming ominously in the distance. And as she lay there, trembling and exhausted, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she had unleashed something truly terrifying into the world. Something that would haunt her dreams for the rest of her days. For in the heart of that old, decrepit hospital, the whispers in the dark had finally been silenced. But the nightmares they left behind would never truly fade away. Story 2. In the quiet town of Oak Ridge, nestled among the dense forests and rolling hills of the countryside, there stood an old, forgotten mansion. Known to the locals as the Blackwood Manor, the imposing structure had long been shrouded in mystery and rumor. Many whispered tales of tragic events that had unfolded within its walls, but few dared to venture near after dark. Among those brave enough to explore the secrets of the Blackwood Manor was a group of thrill-seekers led by Alex, a charismatic young man with a passion for the supernatural. Together with his friends Sarah, Mark, and Jessica, they had spent countless nights searching for evidence of the mansion's dark past. One fateful evening, as the moon hung low in the sky and the stars twinkled overhead, the group gathered outside the gates of the Blackwood Manor, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they prepared to embark on their most daring adventure yet. As they made their way through the overgrown grounds, the air grew thick with a sense of foreboding. The trees seemed to whisper secrets to each other, and the shadows danced ominously in the moonlight. But Alex and his friends were undeterred, their curiosity driving them ever onward. Finally, they reached the imposing front doors of the mansion, their ancient wood creaking ominously as they swung open with a deafening groan. Stepping inside, the group found themselves bathed in darkness, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. For hours, they explored the labyrinthine corridors of the Blackwood Manor, searching for any sign of the supernatural. But as the night wore on and their energy began to wane, they began to lose hope of finding anything out of the ordinary. Just as they were about to call it quits and head home, Sarah's flashlight flickered and died, leaving them plunged into darkness. Panicking, she fumbled for her spare batteries, but when she finally managed to replace them, her flashlight remained stubbornly dark. Suddenly, a chill swept through the air, sending shivers down the group's spines. They could feel eyes watching them from the shadows, and a sense of dread washed over them like a tidal wave. "Did you guys hear that?" Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. Before anyone could respond, a voice echoed through the darkness, sending chills down their spines. "Leave this place," it whispered, its words barely more than a breath. "You do not belong here." Terrified, the group turned to flee, but as they reached the front doors, they found them sealed shut, trapping them inside the Blackwood Manor with whatever malevolent force lurked within. Frantically, they searched for another way out, but no matter where they turned, they found themselves met with locked doors and impassable corridors. It was as if the mansion itself was alive, taunting them with its impossible geometry and endless maze of rooms. Hours passed, each one feeling like an eternity as the group struggled to find a way to escape. But as dawn approached and the first light of morning crept through the windows, they found themselves standing once again in the grand foyer, the front doors standing open before them. With a collective sigh of relief, they stumbled out into the cool morning air, their bodies bruised and battered but their spirits unbroken. As they made their way back to town, they vowed never to speak of their night in the Blackwood Manor again. But deep down, they knew that the memories of that fateful night would haunt them for the rest of their lives. And as they looked back at the imposing mansion looming in the distance, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had unleashed something truly terrifying into the world. Something that would forever lurk in the midnight shadows, waiting to claim its next unsuspecting victim. Story 3. In the small, sleepy town of Willowbrook, nestled deep in the heart of the countryside, there stood an old, abandoned asylum. Known to the locals as the Whispering Hollow, the dilapidated building had long been a source of fear and fascination for those brave enough to venture near its crumbling walls. Among the curious souls drawn to the Whispering Hollow was Amelia, a young journalist with a thirst for adventure. Ever since she had stumbled upon the asylum's dark history in the archives of the local library, she had been consumed by a desire to uncover the truth behind its haunted halls. Armed with little more than a notebook and a camera, Amelia set out one moonlit night to explore the Whispering Hollow for herself. As she approached the crumbling building, a sense of unease settled over her like a shroud, but she pushed aside her fears and pressed on. Entering through a broken window, Amelia found herself standing in the asylum's grand foyer, the air thick with dust and decay. Moonlight streamed through the shattered ceiling, casting eerie shadows on the cracked walls. But Amelia paid them no mind as she began to explore the abandoned corridors, her heart pounding with excitement. For hours, she wandered the labyrinthine halls of the Whispering Hollow, her senses on high alert for any sign of the supernatural. But as the night wore on and exhaustion began to take its toll, she began to lose hope of finding anything of interest. Just as she was about to call it quits and head home, a faint whisper echoed through the darkness, sending shivers down her spine. At first, she dismissed it as her imagination playing tricks on her, but then it came again, closer this time, and unmistakably human. "Who's there?" Amelia called out, her voice echoing off the walls. There was no response, but as she turned a corner, she caught sight of a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was a woman, her features obscured by the shadows, but Amelia could sense the sadness emanating from her like a palpable force. "Are you okay?" Amelia asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. The woman didn't answer, but as Amelia drew closer, she could see tears glistening in her eyes. It was then that she noticed the faded hospital gown she wore, and a chill ran down her spine as she realized the truth. "You're one of the patients, aren't you?" Amelia said, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and longing. She reached out a hand towards Amelia, her fingers trembling with emotion. "Help me," she pleaded, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I've been trapped here for so long, forgotten by the world. Please, you have to set me free." Despite her fear, Amelia felt a surge of compassion for the woman before her. She had come to the Whispering Hollow in search of a story, but now she was faced with a choice that could change both of their lives forever. With trembling hands, Amelia reached out and took the woman's hand in her own. Closing her eyes, she whispered a silent prayer as she focused all her energy on the task at hand. Suddenly, the air crackled with energy, and Amelia felt a surge of power coursing through her veins. With a cry of triumph, she opened her eyes to find the woman's form beginning to fade, like mist in the morning sun. And then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, the woman was gone, leaving behind only a faint echo of her voice lingering in the air. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the broken windows of the Whispering Hollow, Amelia stood alone in the empty hallway, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She had uncovered the asylum's darkest secret, but at what cost? For in that moment, she realized that some mysteries were better left unsolved, and some secrets were meant to stay buried in the darkness forever. And as she made her way out of the Whispering Hollow and into the cool light of morning, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had unleashed something truly terrifying into the world. Something that would haunt her dreams for the rest of her days. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment and turn on notifications if you enjoyed the video so you never miss an upload.